Movie friends, you've joined us for an extra special evening of movie fun. Welcome to What's Your Favorite Movie? I've just said movie 3 times now in the first 7 seconds of the show. My name's Ed South, and welcome to our show where we talk about movies, favorite movies, why we love them, how they've inspired us to be better people, and how they can inspire you to be better people. My guest tonight I'm very excited to have in the studio. You've heard about him on the show before, but he's here in the luxurious What's Your Favorite Movie studios. Please say hello to producer Brian in the flesh.
Hello, producer Brian.
In the flesh. So, Brian, good friend of mine, like almost every guest is, lives in California. That's far from here.
It's true.
In Pennsylvania, our Pennsylvania studios.
I flew 3,000 miles just to record the podcast with you.
Just to be here.
That is correct.
So, how exciting is that? We have a budget for guests. He's staying at the luxurious Waldorf Astoria Hotel down. Oh, whatever. Okay. So, Brian's here, and we're going to probably talk a lot about Star Wars, which, of course, the new Star Wars movie is just a week or two away from when this comes out. We should have done that math ahead of time, but Rogue One.
Or day of.
It's not coming out the day of. When's the new movie come out? The 19th, right?
16th.
This will be out before that. So
excellent.
So, Brian and I go way back, again, as a lot of my guests do, but we are very good friends, and I was going to say you and I have developed quite a texting relation, a platonic texting relationship over the years.
You said relationship. I thought you were going to say habit.
Yes, habit.
Problem, possibly.
Because at one time we were both at very dead-end, empty jobs where we didn't... can I call you that job dead-end when you're... Yeah,
you sure can.
Okay. So we both had a lot of time on our hands while we were at work, and we just got into the habit of texting a lot. So I think our friendship has been empowered by texting, if you will.
I would agree. It's amazing what technology has done. I think it would have been like 3 phone calls in the last several years, if not...
And a couple of courier pigeon messages. So what is that? Why?
At least a raven or 2.
So Brian and I always, to let you guys know how we met, we always discuss how we met back in the day. And there's 3 stories of how we met. They're all true. I don't remember one of them personally.
2 are true and one is a lie. Guess which one?
Today, so the first time we met was in college. I was working doing orientations, and Brian was allegedly in my group, and I gave a tour of the school, and he was there. Allegedly, I don't remember this.
I was standing there.
I know. You went on one tour. I had 30 tours that summer, so I don't remember that at all. But I take your word for it.
We talked for like an hour. It's all good. I was there. It was cool.
And then, did we talk about movies?
We did.
Of course.
We did. You asked me what my favorite movie was, and I said...
Oh, yeah, I used to ask people that on the tour. Oh, my gosh. That's funny.
I said, at the time, it was either Star Wars or another movie I had just seen, which was Avenging Disco Godfather, starring Rudy Ray Moore. But I kind of grew out of that phase, and it's just Star Wars now.
And then did I question you about... I used to ask everybody. Now I can think in my head of where on the tour I did that.
Now you're going, oh, you were the Star Wars guy. Now I remember.
Now I remember you. And I was the What's Your Favorite Movie guy 20 years ago. Who knew?
It's true.
It shows how much I've grown as a person that I still just... now I have a show to ask people, hey, what's your favorite movie?
That's right.
But
it's much more efficient. You've cut out the college and the touring entirely.
And just broadcast it for the world. But then our second story is movie-oriented, where we had a common friend, Terry, who's been on the show.
Yes.
And he brought you and some other people, we'll leave it at that, to join myself and some others, and we went and saw Showgirls, the still to this day only big NC-17 film to get a major theatrical release. And you got carded.
I did. I got stopped. Everyone else in the group got through, no problem. I was the last in line, and the theater guy was like, oh, hang on. Gotta see some ID, which I laughed off because I assumed he was joking. Nope, and I had to sit there and dig out my ID while the group was getting ahead of me. And I remember Ed kind of looking back and going, what? Come on, what's going on? Sorry, I'm getting carded. to go see this movie about girls.
Because your friends had a habit of just leaving you behind to deal with your problems. And I was a little more, like, inclusive. Like, hey, we should wait for this guy.
That is sadly true. But yes, accurate. Yeah.
We should wait for this guy. So that was, like, our first social setting. But then I think where we really got to know each other is in college.
And again, movie-related.
Movie-related,
We brought
right.
the two together.
That's true. I was somehow in charge of film screenings on campus. Like, if somebody wanted to screen a movie, it had to go through me because I was president of the film forum. Ooh. And Brian and his friend Bill had made a movie called Honky, and they wanted to screen it. And I was like, yeah, I guess, whatever, that's fine. It was some...
Honky : the movie.
I'm sorry. Yes. Exclamation point at the end?
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct.
So yeah, we had like some kind of student showcase or whatever, and then at the end we screened the movie, and I wasn't paying much attention at first, but the audience was howling, and then I started paying attention, and I didn't know them besides meeting them once or twice. It was funny. It still is funny. It's a funny movie that's accessible to people that not just that know you and are like, oh look, there's Brian and Bill up on screen, whatever. So yeah, so then I was like, I want to be friends with these guys and be in their movies and everything, and it just kind of grew from there. So good times.
Yep.
And then you guys remade Honky. With the first version of Honky was done with like a VHS camera.
The first version was VHS. It was like I think 55 minutes long or something like that. Yeah, and then for some reason, we felt strongly compelled to make it feature length, and we reshot the whole thing on digital video.
And used original music, like took out all the copyrighted stuff was in the original film.
Yeah.
Like there was, just regular music.
Yeah, we were trying to do it legit. So
yes,
everything,
you guys did.
Yeah, everything was
totally
original.
And I was in the remake. Thank you very much.
You were. How much did you pay to see the movie ultimately?
And then they had a screening of the movie at a movie theater, and his wife charged me to get in. I was in the movie. Do you think Tom Cruise had to pay to see Top Gun? No.
I wonder if Tom Cruise has seen any of the movies he's been in, or if he just thought they were real as they were happening. We charged. It wasn't my wife. It was Bill and I charged you the $7.
It was you all these years?
Sorry, that's it. The show's over.
So we thought also we should take a moment to talk about Bill Rollins, who is a friend of ours, and I knew him fairly well, but Brian knew him all the way back since you guys were like 2, right?
Yeah, we both met when we were 2 years old, and basically grew up together. And we were both born the same year that Star Wars came out, so we were Star Wars babies and grew up Star Wars. It's what inspired us to want to be storytellers and why we were making the movies and everything else.
And we should say Honky is one of many, many projects, both film or audio tapes or whatever else that you guys had done over the years. Right.
Yes, so it was a great creative collaboration.
Right.
But we wanted to bring it up quickly because one of the things that I love about this podcast and about what you do with the podcast is that it's about favorite movies and just the personal connections, right? It's not about nitpicking about what the director got wrong or anything like that, right? There's no such thing as a guilty pleasure in the What's Your Favorite Movie podcast. So many of my movie stories involve Bill. And you're going to hear the name come up a lot of times if you keep listening. And the reason we have to bring him up is because unexpectedly and suddenly earlier this year, March 2016, if you're a future listener, Bill passed away, which obviously left a mark on everybody that knew him so well. But, Star Wars, let's say Star Wars one more time, is a big part of my life, is a big part of his and of our friendship. And I'm sure we'll get to the story, but one of my greatest Star Wars memories ever, several of them, but definitely one of the top ones, involves Bill.
Right.
And it is great to have those memories to fall back on and connect with them in that way.
Right.
That brings joy.
That's awesome.
Instead of sorrow. So we miss Bill, but we have a lot of great memories involving Bill that we can fall back on. So.
And kind of also another reason we're doing a kind of a segment on him is because when I started this show, when I was coming up with the idea or whatever, and I made a list of people who I knew I could have on the first handful of episodes fairly, without having to talk them into it, and I knew they'd be good guests. Bill was literally near the top of my list. And then he actually passed away on the day that I recorded the second episode of this and was getting ready to roll all this out to everybody. And I put it off for a couple of weeks, and it was kind of hard to bring it out because it was like, hey, we got, this is more important, obviously.
Right.
So, yeah, and I've never, I was like, oh, I got to do something about Bill in the next episode, and then didn't, felt uncomfortable doing it or whatever. And, of course, obviously it feels right to do it with you, and he would have been awesome to have on the show. And so many, and then when I was thinking about Bill, and obviously he was a humongous part of your life, but and something you said at his funeral, just like all the adventures that we have because of him. And, I mean, I worked on real movies because of Bill. I was extras in films and got paid like real actual studio films that he got me the job on. And then the only film, it's not a big film, but I actually have my name in the credits of a movie, Ghostwatcher, that I worked on and got paid on. And that was all through Bill. And he took me to New York and worked on projects. And it was just crazy. So we're definitely dedicating this episode to Bill. And
that's right.
We're going to play a little Celine Dion right now. I'm kidding. Yeah, we just want to shout him out. And, of course, you're going to hear Bill's name about 150 times probably in the next hour or so. And unfortunately, we can never have Bill on the show, but his spirit lives on.
Absolutely.
Brian and I are such good friends that I said to him, don't give me a list of your 5 favorite films. I'm going to tell you a list of your 5 favorite films and see how close I am.
Yep.
So do you have any formation in your head of what that list might look like?
None. I've just been waiting to see what you come up with.
What are my favorite films?
I imagine it will be extremely accurate.
Well, number 1 is obviously Star Wars.
Way off base. Yes, obviously Star Wars for number 1.
It's the Age of Innocence.
Well, and that's the thing with these lists. I think you've heard this from other guests too. Is like if you have something like a Star Wars or like an Indiana Jones as an idea, if you do all the movies, the entire list gets filled up and you're done. Right.
So the Star Wars saga.
The Star Wars saga.
Because you don't subscribe to the first 3 suck. I mean, they're not obviously not as when we say first 3, episodes 1 through 3 are obviously inferior to 4, 5, 6, and even 7. But they don't suck. They're watchable. They're awesome. They have good parts. Yeah. You have a Darth Maul soap dispenser in your house, probably, or whatever the case is.
Yeah,
that was a shout out to my brother-in-law who does have a Darth Maul soap dispenser in his bathroom. Yes.
Yeah, no, you're right. I don't hate on them as badly as I think a lot of the diehard fans do. They're not my faves.
The first 3, right?
The
prequels. There's no way. Yeah, the prequels. That's how you call it. Right. Okay.
I think objectively they're not great movies,
but they get by because of a little help from their friends.
A little help from lightsabers and John Williams.
So the saga number 1,
sure,
with a bullet.
Yep.
We'll come back to that.
Yep.
We don't need to talk about all these in great length. And maybe these aren't in any order, but number 2 would be the Indiana Jones saga.
I think you have to go there next. Sure. Yeah.
And you also subscribe that the 4th one is a little inferior to the other 3, or a lot inferior?
I would say a little. That's another one that people hated on really badly, but I grew up defending Temple of Doom, which used to be the movie that everybody hated.
Right.
From Indiana Jones, and I loved it.
Why would they hate that?
I don't know.
That's great.
It's a fantastic film. I loved all of them. People would be like, oh, Short Round's stupid or whatever. Short Round's rad. I love Short Round. And then the new one came out, and all these people started saying, like, oh, what 4th movie? I don't even know what you're talking about. I only remember the first 3. It's like, oh, well, I guess Temple made it back into the fold, huh? Good news for them.
I think I told this story before, but I didn't even know Indiana Jones was a thing until the 3rd movie came out in high school. I was like, oh, that's a thing? And everybody was excited about it.
Did they make another one of those?
Yeah. What's that all about? I can just remember this guy, Eric, on the bus so excited about, like, what Last Crusade, right? Last Crusade's coming out. Like, really? Who cares? That's a thing? And now, at this point in time, I have seen all but Last Crusade. And I enjoyed...
A lot of people will call that out as their favorite.
And I guess I'm the only person on the planet over the age of 10 that saw Crystal Skull, right?
Mm-hmm.
First. I saw that one first. And just thought, like, whatever.
Sure,
it was
okay. That's a good jumping off point.
Yeah.
Why not?
But then I loved the other 2 that I've seen, and I actually saw Raiders the second time in a theater, so I get points for that.
Maybe my favorite indie memory was that when Temple of Doom came out, I forget how young I was, but pretty young. But my dad took me to see it. It was okay. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Temple of Doom was pre PG-13 rating.
There is some. I say yes.
Okay.
There is some back and forth about that because now it's PG-13. Now,
so
if you buy a DVD of it, it's PG-13. I
remember, and it might be an urban legend, but I remember some talk about that movie being part of the catalyst to get a new rating.
Right.
Because for PG, it was a little harsh in moments.
Right.
But Dad took me anyway. I loved it. But the thing that blew my mind the most was that my elementary school principal was in the row behind me. Oh. And I had that classic kid moment, like the first time seeing school faculty off campus and just going like, what? They can buy groceries? This is incredible. Mr. Miner was his name. And I was like, why is he seeing a movie? Because he's allowed to do that? Because he's a human?
It's kind of funny because Mr. Miner made a major impression on you. So obviously you saw all 4 indies in the theater.
I did. The fourth one happened to come out. Yes. Fourth one happened to come out while my dad was out visiting. So by that time, I was out in California. He happened to be visiting. I was like, Dad, this time I'm going to take you to the theater. Movies. And bought him a ticket. Which cool. I think actually embarrassed him a little bit. But I was like, you can get the next one.
It's awesome that you have parents that would do that because
would humor me in that way.
I guess my mother would have maybe appreciated something like that, but I don't see anybody else in my life. Like, we got to go, except my son. Like, we got to go see that movie in the same theater we saw the first one. I'm like, what? What are you talking? Nobody cares. And obviously, you've dressed up as Star Wars characters multiple points in your life. We don't need to go into that right now. Yes. Indiana Jones, you've had...
Let's assume that's happened many times.
You've had an Indiana Jones costume.
I've had at least one Indiana Jones Halloween, yes.
Have you ever dressed up as Indiana Jones outside of the classic fedora leather jacket whip look? Did you do like a different scene for a deep cut or?
Oh, I wish I could bust out a story of like white tuxedo Indiana, but no, I never got around to short round either. Maybe I should eBay an old Yankees cap and set that up.
All right, number 3 on my guest
You're good
list.
so far.
Ghostbusters? Is that
sure?
Don't just agree with me.
I will now accept that as my 3rd favorite movie.
Ed said it's my favorite movie. I love it.
I'm just taking assignments. Yeah, I mean, I think
number 1, you've dressed up multiple times as a Ghostbuster.
Wait a second.
As recently as July of this year.
That is true. I did. It's the only thing I've ever actually built with my own hands as a proton pack. And considering the incredibly cheap materials I used, I think it came out all right.
Yes.
It makes a good impression. It did win first place for male costume at a major third-party video game publisher.
I didn't even say that.
Where I work.
Your job.
What is my job again?
Game designer for a major third-party game publisher.
That is correct.
We just jumped right into the fun. But in California.
But I did win their costume contest.
There you go. Okay, Ghostbusters.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I like all 3 of them.
I do. I would... Oh, let's get nerdy. I would even consider it 4 because of the video game.
That is nerdy.
2009. That is good and nerdy.
But the video game has the whole cast.
It does. Dan Aykroyd was trying to get an actual Ghostbusters 3 going for forever. And it never came together. But
Dan Aykroyd's been trying to get a 2 or 3 of everything together forever.
I'm sure he's back to... Ghostbusters is out now. He's back to Great Outdoors 2. Maybe we can get that rolling.
My stepmother is still an alien.
Perfect. But he and Harold Ramis actually wrote the video game. They had all 4 of the Ghostbusters and Janine, Annie Potts. They did not have Sigourney Weaver. Although she claimed later that they never asked her. And they did not have Rick Moranis because
he's a hermit.
He is too busy being a hermit. But it was surprising how much it was set in 1991, so it was right after the second movie.
Was Bobby Brown in the video game?
I do not believe he made it in. Probably in a lost level.
Is Stay Puft in the game?
Stay Puft is in the game.
Nice.
Slimer's in the game. In the beginning, there's an event and Slimer escapes and goes back to the Sedgwick Hotel, and you have to go back to the ballroom and chase him down. it was surprising. Ed loves every second of this.
No.
It was surprising how much it looked and felt like one of the movies. So a lot of nerds online like to say, like, well, that's my Ghostbusters 3. It was that great game.
That's fine. It can be your Ghostbusters 3 because the third Ghostbusters doesn't claim to be 3. It's just Ghostbusters.
That's right.
I'm sorry. It's Ghostbusters.
Answer the call.
And then you liked the third one very much, and you were very excited to put your costume on and go to the movies.
Yes, and I met some other people that were there that were very excited and put costumes on, and we got pictures together, and it was a fun night.
I wish I had.
And it was a fun movie.
I wish I had another costume. I only have my Flintstone costume.
You could wear your Flintstone costume to Ghostbusters. That's fine.
I could have wore it to Nemo, and people would have just thought maybe I was Nemo. It's orange. It's big and orange.
That's true. I like how you've replaced the white stripes with black triangles.
I could have tucked my one arm in so I had a little fin. That's not right. And we've
Don't make fun of fish disabilities, Ed.
They're called fish abilities. Sounds like a Red Lobster promotion.
This summer, fish abilities starting at $29.99.
The third movie, we've talked about it so much on the show because it came out while this show's been going, but you liked the third movie?
I did. I thought it's one of those movies where you feel like everybody involved was just having so much fun making the thing, and it reads through. It was very funny.
And as I've stated before, I loathe Melissa McCarthy.
Mm-hmm.
I could not be more worn out on Kristen Wiig.
Yeah.
I love Leslie Jones and Kate McKinnon's awesome, but my loathing of those other two was not overwhelming. The movie was so fun.
Well, and I remember we were talking about it before and saying, like, well, maybe because it's all four of them and it's not entirely centered around just Melissa or whoever, maybe they're, like, dialed back a little bit to be more part of the whole. And it was. They absolutely were. She
did not down a whole bottle of salad dressing anywhere in that movie.
She did not. Not even in the deleted scenes that I've seen. I also remember just how excited we were that Kate McKinnon and Leslie Jones were cast in a major summer blockbuster.
Yeah,
That's
she
awesome.
was great. Were you a big fan of the television series The Real Ghostbusters?
I was. I even watched a handful of episodes of Ghostbusters, the Filmation cartoon.
The Filmation cartoon based on an old 70s sitcom.
Yep.
Where one of the Ghostbusters is a gorilla. Moving on.
I was so excited as a kid that Ghostbusters was getting an actual cartoon.
Right. And you could watch Ghostbusters Adventures.
Although I think I was young enough I remember being disappointed that it was only half an hour. Like, I thought they had actually...
It should be 90 minutes every day.
I thought they'd actually animated the movie. Like, I thought I was going to see a cartoon version of the Ghostbusters film, unchanged, except just to be in cartoon form, because that's something that they would spend time and money on. But then I was like, oh, okay, if it's going to keep happening every week, I guess this is cool.
Way back in the day on HBO, which I wax sentiment about HBO constantly, they would do, on Christmas Eve, they would do this thing that they didn't advertise or whatever, but I saw it in the TV guide, and it would say something like Christmas present, and it would be a 2-hour block on the TV guide, Christmas present. So I set the recorder. Well, I set the recorder one year, and it was Annie. They showed Annie before it was on HBO, like a couple months. So whatever. The one year it was Ghostbusters. So I set the timer, and like the next morning I get up, like after Christmas Day or whatever was all done, I go, oh, what was on TV last night? Freaking Ghostbusters was on.
That's amazing.
And like I hadn't seen it then or whatever, and I watched it and didn't like it. But anyway.
Wait, that had a twist ending I didn't like. My family stood in line at our local video store.
Nice.
Or sorry, we didn't stand in line, but we had to put our name on a list
right.
at the video time, I think it was called. And it was weeks before our turn came up on the list. But when we got, Ghostbusters inside our own home,
what?
Get the popcorn maker going.
And you probably watched it like 5 times in the 24 hours that you had to return it.
And it was the old kind of popcorn maker they had to like pour boiling oil into or something. Based on medieval torture devices.
That's when popcorn was good and people liked it. Number 4 on my dream list for you.
Yeah.
Back to the Future?
All right.
Is that up there? Come on, is it up there?
So here's the thing. You have to get Star Wars and Indy pretty much out of the way immediately.
Right.
Because, and you know, 80s kids, I think, have a reputation for being a little insane with the nostalgia. But when you're a kid,
we had all the best stuff.
and that's why. And you grow up in an era of Star Wars and Indiana Jones. Like, it was amazing. The stories that were coming out. Those two.
It started with Star Wars.
Yeah.
And everything was awesome from Star Wars up until Ninja Turtles. And then after Ninja Turtles, there wasn't nothing. Go ahead.
Ninja Turtles 90? 91?
Yeah, when that all came around.
Because I would still... It sits just under Indie and Star Wars and all these others, but like Jurassic Park, I think was 92 that I think sort of bookends that.
I was in college then,
the original.
So that was like the end of my
I get that.
kid years. You're a little younger than me.
I get that.
Also didn't like... No, I did like Jurassic Park. I didn't see it in the theater. I had no interest in seeing it, but then when I saw it on tape... I liked it. But
I think it was around that. When I think about 90s movies, I'm like, ooh, Daredevil? I don't know.
Did Jurassic Park... What? Daredevil?
Yeah. Like, when I think about 90s movies, I don't have the same...
Right.
You know, I'm sure 90s kids do, but...
Jurassic Park have the same cultural impact as some of these other movies? That had a pretty big...
I feel like it did probably a little more on younger kids. Like, I think it definitely took the dinosaur... phase that a lot of kids hit naturally and just like cranked that nationally, at least. Really
it was
hard.
Also the perfect vehicle for the then new CG, because we're burned out on CG and anybody knows that it's CG computer. But those we were like, what?
It was incredible, and it's amazing how well a lot of that still holds up.
Right.
A lot of it's mixed with practical effects as well. But yeah, the CG was amazing, and it's for some reason, even though it was kind of a pioneer, it holds up better than a lot of movies that followed it. Even some stuff in the prequels looks very dated now.
Maybe Jurassic Park should be on the list instead of Back to the Future.
Well, so that's the thing. Like I mentioned that Star Wars and Indy kind of have to get put right out there, but then like almost everything from that era sort of ties for third.
Right.
You know, like I could spew out a bunch that might still be on the list. I don't know. Jurassic, I don't know. Back to the Future, I just rewatched the trilogy with my daughter, and it's still amazing. That also had a good video game attached to it, by the way.
The first...
I'm slowly converting it to the What's Your Favorite Video Game podcast.
The first... we should do an episode where you try to turn it into that while I try to turn it into What's Your Favorite Amusement Park. The first Back to the Future, which we've talked about on here before.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yes.
When I rewatched it recently, I think I just watched it with my kids, but like, man, this holds up. Like, this is a phenomenal movie, and it's completely accessible.
That one, and I think this is probably true for a lot of families, the first movie we ever had in our house, the very first VHS cassette that went in the VCR.
No.
Back to the Future.
Mine was Santa Claus Conquers the Martians, but...
Also classic.
I think the first tape I owned was Vacation. National Lampoon's Vacation.
Genuinely classic.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the second one, I rewatched on the day... No, I rewatched the second one on New Year's Day of what, 20... What year do they go back to in Back to the Future 2?
2015.
Right, okay, so we all watched it New Year's Day on 2015. Showed the kids it. There is so much going on in that movie. In the middle of it is so convoluted. I have no idea what's going on. There's like 16 layers of the movie happening at one time. And I remember this, I have a very, very, very strict rule about not talking in a movie and whatever. And I remember saying out loud in a crowded movie theater, what is going on? Just announced it to the theater. What is going on? That scene where Michael J. Fox is talking to Biff, and like when he's like Rich Biff and they're in the big boardroom. Oh my God, that scene goes on for like an hour.
Yeah, I remember not being super impressed when I first saw it. And even as a kid kind of going like, this just feels like a bridge movie between the first and third one. I don't know if it stands up on its own.
And then the third one's really good.
The third one is really good.
Fun.
I didn't think I was going to like it as a kid because I was like, oh, it's Western the whole time? Like in the last one, they got to go all over the place.
Right.
Or when.
Anyway.
But I did really like it. And now, I watched the second one again on Back to the Future Day or whatever they called it, which is the actual date. I think, I'm going to guess, and I'll kick myself later when I'm wrong, it was October 21st, 2015.
Sounds right.
But we got some Pizza Hut and we put in the movie and watched it, and I was like, all right, like as part of the whole, I sort of come to appreciate it again, but nothing touches the first one. The first one is just structurally perfect.
It's a perfect movie.
And
I think it's on the National Film Registry even.
Should be.
So perfect. Should be. You're on the National Film Registry.
I should be.
And it's weird looking at this list after Star Wars, Indy, and Ghostbusters that there's not a modern, like a Back to the Future, or Back to the Future 4, or Back to the Future.
They've
the
protected
Force
that. That's
Awakens.
one of the few that have stuck to a trilogy.
Okay, so maybe Jurassic Park, but then my fifth one I have is Goonies.
Sure. Let's talk about Goonies and the all-human cast it enjoyed.
You love you some Goonies, though.
I do love me some Goonies.
You have
it's
a Goonies.
Another. I am such a stereotype of the 80s kid.
Yeah, these are all...
But I mean, there are other movies I enjoy, but when you only get 5, you kind of...
What are some other ones that are in the cavalcade, then, of the big lovey-dovey movies in your life?
So, I have a shelf that's kind of like it's mostly the Brian childhood shelf, but it has all of those. It does have 4 of the 5 Die Hard movies. Not rushing out to get that 5th one. Love the first 4. Jaws is in there. Gremlins is in there.
Yes. Wait, Die Hard 5 is the Russia one?
Yes.
Okay, 4 is the one with where they break into the Social Security building.
It's in Woodlawn, yeah.
Which is down the road here from where we're recording this, and it looks nothing like the actual building.
Yeah, well, the best part, they did shoot some of that in Baltimore, where I grew up. This was Live Free or Die Hard. And there's part where John McClane jumps up on a statue of Washington that's like a few blocks from where I used to live in Baltimore City. And he stands up and he's like looking over the traffic, and it cuts to the Capitol building. And it's like, well, that's an hour and a half away at least.
You're like, there's a lot of people who love Star Wars and then also also automatically in there, they love Indiana Jones, Ghostbusters, Back to the Future.
Sure. They all go together.
Yes.
There's a whole family. Incredible storytelling.
Incredible.
Was going on.
They were amazing stories, if you will.
They were. And Spielberg was involved in many of them.
Amazing stories, however, not so amazing.
But the birth of the failed animated sitcom Family Dog, if memory serves.
Directed by Brad Bird, who did Incredibles. Yeah.
Wow.
And so many others.
I did not know that.
So many other films. When Amazing Stories came out, which if you guys don't remember what that was an anthology.
Look up the theme song, which I believe was by John Williams.
Yes.
And was amazing.
Yes, that was amazing. That's a story.
Yes,
it was an anthology series, and it was heavily, heavily promoted as Steven Spielberg's show. Right. This was the equivalent of having Alfred Hitchcock do his show like this, although Spielberg did not appear, and that was probably a mistake. He should have started each episode like that. Such big promo for that, and I think everybody was like excited and like, holy crap, we're going to get a new Spielberg movie every week. And then
that was kind of the promise, yeah.
And then it was just kind of,
Here's one about a cartoon dog.
Here's one about Santa Claus getting arrested. And it was like some of them were really good, and some of them were like, why are we talking about Amazing Stories?
What's your favorite movie podcast?
One of them is an hour long, and it all builds up to Kevin Costner drawing a cartoon wheel on an airplane. Do you remember that one?
Was that Kevin Costner?
I believe so.
Wow.
Maybe I'm wrong.
I vividly, it could have been. I vividly remember that episode. He was trapped in the belly of the bomber, or the belly gun position.
Right.
And the landing craft wouldn't work, and he was going to be crushed when the plane crash landed. But fortunately, he was able to draw giant cartoon wheels.
Right. And like in the last minute, he draws the cartoon wheels, and then the score like swells, and it's like, wow, we
what an amazing story.
But
that will be edited out of the podcast.
But the family dog, he said, "Mom, the dog's whizzing on the carpet." And then the next day in school, everyone was saying that. Like, they said whizzed on TV?
I almost said that when it first came up. I did not realize.
You can say whiz on a podcast.
Well, now that I know that, let's whiz our way through the rest.
Speaking of all these awesome movies, Brian, tell me about this T-shirt you're wearing. It is also amazing.
Oh, this T-shirt?
Yes, that T-shirt right there.
You probably noticed when we were talking about Back to the Future that my T-shirt has a flux capacitor on it.
A flux capacitor, you say?
I do say that, and it's because I got this T-shirt from a place called DexShirts.com.
Oh, DexShirts.com. I heard that they have unique and exclusive T-shirts inspired by pop culture and iconic movie themes.
Oh, they absolutely do. I mean, films like Jurassic Park, Back to the Future, as we talked about, Total Recall, Ghostbusters, and of course, Star Wars.
Of course.
The thing about DeckShirts.com is that they use a professional print process to bring artists' work directly to their snug and comfortable fitting shirts. Did you know that?
I did not know that. If only I had a promo code.
Well, you know what? You can use your own exclusive promo code.
That I have?
That's the one.
That I have?
Yes, your own exclusive promo code, WYFMovie. Use that at the checkout to save 20% off your entire order.
Wow.
And in case we didn't mention it enough, that's DeckShirts.com, DEX Shirts.com.
Guys, that was a promo for our sponsor, in case you didn't notice.
Don't give it away. It sounded completely natural.
All right, we're going to talk about some Star Wars, though. But before we do that...
Carnation evaporated milk.
I was going to do that! See, back in the day, folks, on radio, they would incorporate the commercial right into the script of the show. Is what we kind of decided at the very last second, instead of writing it out and doing it real well. But we'll try it again.
No one could tell.
We'll try it again on another good round, if you will. Brian, before we talk about Star Wars, are you ready to play a game?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
You did not know you were getting a game on the show.
I'm excited.
In this game, we're not playing Pyramid.
Okay, fair enough.
It's very, very much like Pyramid in every sense of the word, except I don't have the music queued up. It's actually called Out of Character.
It's actually called Triangle.
It's called Out of Character.
Okay.
And you just have to name these movies, and I will give you a clue. But instead of telling you who's in the movie, I will use another famous character that actor has played. For example, if I say Muhammad Ali and Two-Face make up a secret organization that monitors aliens on Earth, you would say...
Men in Black.
That is correct. All right,
excellent.
You ready? And I even made a note to take score of this time, okay?
Yes.
All right, so Ferris Bueller and his father, Darth Vader, rule over their kingdom with the help of Mr. Bean in this Disney classic.
Definitely the Lion King.
Correct. While filming a war movie in the jungle, Iron Man, Greg Fokker, and Kung Fu Panda are mistaken for real soldiers.
I know the movie. Was it Tropic Thunder? Is that the
That's
title?
correct,
Excellent.
Yes. A ghost may be haunting the lakeside home of Indiana Jones and Catwoman.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about. I don't think I'm going to be able to get the title. Michelle Pfeiffer and Harrison Ford in...
What Lies Beneath.
What Lies Beneath.
It's from 2000.
The terrible thing is I'm sitting here going, I feel like something's beneath something else in this movie, and I couldn't get there.
Where does it lie? Number 4.
And what is it?
A family of Mary Poppins waiters are adopted by Ace Ventura. Jessica Fletcher and Agent Coulson round out the cast.
I did not know that Agent Coulson was in Mr. Popper's Penguins.
That is correct.
I'll have to give that a watch.
In this
Greg.
In this 1986 comedy, colonial witch Winifred Saunders is kidnapped by Brad Hamilton and Supergirl in the hopes of collecting ransom from her husband, the Penguin.
Oh my god, I think Supergirl gave it to me. Is it Ruthless People?
That is correct.
Wow. Wow. All right.
Princess Leia and the conductor of the Polar Express suspect...
Burbs! Keep going.
Suspect their new neighbors are part of a murderous cult.
Yes.
The Burbs, 1999.
The Burbs.
And from 1993, Mork disguises himself as a nanny to keep an eye on his kids and his ex-wife Gidget, who is now dating James Bond.
Mrs. Doubtfire, of course.
That is right. You got 6 out of 7.
Not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad. I was hoping for the 100%, but I forgot what lay beneath.
What lies
Is that
beneath.
Grammatically correct?
What lies beneath.
I was going for past tense.
What lies beneath is Harrison Ford and Michelle Pfeiffer. And that movie was filmed with the entire crew of Castaway, while they took a year off from Castaway to let Tom Hanks's beard and
No
emaciation kick in. So
That's
to keep
crazy.
the entire cast, or the crew, I'm sorry, not the cast. Tom
Right.
Hanks.
Keep
Tom
the
Hanks.
crew
Tom
going.
Hanks didn't work boom on the movie. Star Wars is different than like every other movie because it really gets into people and becomes part of their lives. And I guess a lot of that has to do with the merchandising because you can surround yourself almost 24 hours a day with Star Wars stuff, and you can have lightsaber barbecue tongs and
Which I do.
and a Star Wars. Well, now you can have a whole Star Wars car, the Rogue or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But obviously you can have like a steering wheel cover and floor mats and whatever the case is. Where it's hard pressed to find like a mannequin barbecue tongs or something like that.
Probably.
It could be like her legs, like a mannequin. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. But anyway, so when or like how early did Star Wars like grip you? Was it like you saw it once and done, you were obsessed, or did it happen over time? As I look up and notice you're wearing a Star Wars hat, but
And
a Star
sweatshirt.
Sweatshirt that matches.
And I have Stormtrooper shoes. And I have an X-Wing on my wallet. And hang on. Let me just check real quick. Okay, no. That's it. That's the full list right now.
Right.
Which, none of that was because I was doing a Star Wars podcast.
Right.
It's just my natural state of being. The weird thing about where Star Wars begins is that, so the legend is, and they've never claimed that this wasn't true, but I was told by my parents that they went and saw Star Wars in its original theatrical run, and that I was born the following morning.
Wow.
So they make the claim. I'll accept it. I can't remember like the first time I saw it. I think.
I mean, do they swear by that, or they just kind of jokingly say it and then move on? Or,
I mean, they said no. Yeah, that's what happened. And
that's
I'm like,
crazy.
All right,
That's
cool.
crazy.
But I know that my mom brought me back when it was in the theater again right before The Empire Strikes Back. It's kind of a promo. So I saw it then, but I would have been 2 or 3 or something. So I sort of have hazy memories, but it wasn't. I wasn't old enough to be like, yes, this is now part of my life. But because I think the merchandising was a big part of it, and I think it was just the fact that like everybody in school was all about Star Wars.
When you were 2?
Yeah, well, eventually when I got to school.
Okay, yeah.
It was like every recess you run out and it's like, all right, who's going to be Luke Skywalker? Who's going to be Han Solo? Who's going to be Chewbacca and Darth Vader and everybody else? That was every single day. And there were fewer things back then. Like back then, I think we talked about this with like the Muppet movie when that came out. It was like the whole summer was
right.
The Muppet movie.
There was less things vying for our attention back then. And
so
when something
was a hit, it was gigantic because it had more space kind of to fill. And the original run on Star Wars, I believe, went from May in 1977 all the way through to the next March.
Yeah.
Which seems insane now, but at the time, once it was gone from the theater, it was sort of, its run was done.
And I was saying this on the last show about things not being necessarily geared toward kids. Like, Star Wars isn't a quote-unquote kids movie. It's not a children's movie. But, I mean, obviously it resonated with kids, but it's just what we had to do then was gravitate to anything that was entertaining to us and like, appealing to us. There wasn't things marketed directly down our throats like that, except for Saturday morning cartoons, which were just kind of disposable and not you might want to get a Scooby-Doo lunchbox or whatever, but you didn't go out and play Scooby-Doo on the playground. Yeah,
I mean, anything that was directed for kids was pretty disposable.
Right.
I think people kind of underestimated the audience. But Star Wars is a great example of something that was truly all ages.
Yeah.
Which is something we see a lot more of now. I mean, Disney obviously was around way before Star Wars was, but, in its modern era, it's really embraced that. Pixar has done that really, really well, where a kid and an adult can genuinely enjoy the same movie for the same reasons, and it just works across all those ages. A lot of people talk about Star Wars as sort of a modern myth, or it's like mythology of the 20th century or whatever, and it has those very clear archetypes, that resonate with people.
Right.
And, maybe that's why it connected, because it had that broad of an audience and it had those themes, those sort of universal themes. But it was, I mean, nothing today really compares. Like, maybe Harry Potter, like a
Right.
fraction of the way. Like, people
Yeah.
are really, really into that, and it's obviously a huge deal in the pop culture, but, like, that's with kind of everything else going on.
It'll take time to tell if Harry Potter has the legs that Star Wars does. Are we still
will.
going to be dressed up in robes and waving wands
Right.
around in 10 years from now?
Yeah. But back then, when there was more space for something to occupy,
People also-
people's attention, like, I can't communicate how huge it was
Right.
for that full run.
Yeah. And people also forget, or maybe don't even realize, like, Star Wars had a wave where, like, it kind of was, we were done with Star Wars for a long while.
Yeah, it's crazy, because I work with a lot of younger people, and a lot of them were kids when the prequels were out, and they have kind of a different perspective on Star Wars. But for them, and now, like, for people now, it's ubiquitous. Like, it's
Right.
just been everywhere with the Clone Wars cartoon and the prequels, and now the new movies are out. But yeah, there was a time, and it's wild to think about now, but there was a time when Star Wars was gone.
Yeah.
I actually remember walking around a department store or a toy store in like the summer of 1984. So this would be a year after Jedi.
Right.
And seeing like one lone Ewok glider and like a couple of pig warmer action figures hanging out and going, oh, like being really sad. I was like, this is the end of an era. It's
Yeah.
kind of gone. And until they announced the special editions in the mid to late 90s.
96, 97.
Yeah, if you were still like humming the Imperial March, kind of carrying a torch, you were kind of weird.
Well, those
and sort of a nerd.
Those the re-releases in 96. I want to say
in
96.
there, maybe 97.
Yeah,
was...
but whatever. Yeah, I'm what?
It just reminded me of you were. I don't know if you bring up the plays ever on the podcast, but we were doing Barn of Thought. I think
We were we were
When-
involved in a play. Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause I remember that because you made me stand up in front of the entire cast and crew and raise my right hand and promise that I would show up for the show because it was opening night on the same weekend as the Star Wars Special Edition.
That's awesome.
You led me in the pledge, and I promised. And then, of course, I went and saw it at like noon, and then
Right.
came in for the
I
play
didn't go.
after. Yeah,
But those came out because Star Wars was resurging again, and people hadn't forgot about it. And you have things like Clerks and Chasing Amy,
Yeah.
and even Mallrats, all the Kevin Smith kind of.
yeah. It became very fashionable to reference
Kevin
Star
Smith
Wars.
was talking about Star Wars in his movies, and people were like, "Yeah, like that's how we talk, and we talk about Star
Right,
Wars." So it kind of
right.
revved up, and the re-releases were somewhat of a response to that. Two things that I remember in this subject are it was like 89 or 90. I worked at Santa Claus at the mall. Like, I was doing the camera and running the line or whatever. And this mom pulls me aside and she says, "My son wants a lightsaber for Christmas. Can you let Santa know and explain to him that that he doesn't make those anymore. You can't buy those anymore," because they just weren't a thing at that point in time, which is ridiculous. Because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure lightsabers will be on the toy shelves
Right.
forever now. Like, that's a standard issue toy, like a soccer ball. But it wasn't a thing. And I remember somewhere within that same time period, the kid down the street was Luke Skywalker for Halloween, and he had to put tinfoil around a baseball bat because you couldn't get a lightsaber. And all the old ones were broken because they were all whopped to death with by playing lightsabers. So it's insane to think that there was a time when they weren't prevalent. And then I guess starting with Phantom Menace in 99, it's just been kind of going strong ever since. And every time a movie comes out, and especially with the Disney taking over in the last movie, the merchandising has just tipped the scales.
Well, and the big thing is that now, and this has been true for a while, when something comes out, when something is made, we basically have it forever.
Right.
Right? And when Return of the Jedi left the theater, there wasn't even home video yet. I mean, maybe like a couple of people, Trailblazers, had like super expensive VCRs and stuff, but it was not a common household item for a couple of years.
And you would cling to things like the comic books.
Oh,
and that's
yeah.
why the toys were so popular, because you could reenact the toys.
Absolutely. One of my favorite memories of the original trilogy, and this is a Bill story, there is a theater in Baltimore called the Senator Theater, historic theater that is beautiful and that I love. And in I'm going to say it's like the early mid-90s, it was like right before we knew the special editions were going to be a thing. So it was still in the Star Wars is kind of gone era. They had special showings of the films, 3 Saturdays in a row, one showing each: Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. And we got tickets. And at the time, the only way you could appreciate Star Wars besides the toys and comics and stuff was everybody had that same boxed collection of the VHS tapes of the 3 movies, and it was cropped to fit the screen, and and was VHS quality.
Pan and scan.
It was pan and scan. They did have the panning and the scanning. So then we go to the theater, and it's widescreen again, and it's crystal clear and beautiful, and the sound was just filling the entire theater, and it was mind-blowing, because I had almost worn out the tapes from watching them so many times, and this was such a different experience. That was amazingly cool. We love to see those.
Did you wear costumes? Were there people in costumes, or was that before?
There were some people in costumes, actually. It wasn't as widespread, I would say. It was like people that were regularly going to conventions and stuff, even before that became kind of cool.
Yeah.
Even before the term cosplay was very common. But some people dressed up. One thing I remember is people cheering. That's great. You don't get that a lot in theaters, but like even for things that had become a little mundane, like Luke blows up the Death Star, sure, big cheer, that's great. But like Wedge in the Battle of Hoth tripping the walker with the tow cable, and that got a big cheer out of the audience. And I just remember thinking, like, these are my people.
Yeah, you're sitting in a room full of people that are just as in love with this movie as you are.
Yeah, and for all I knew, this was the last time I was ever going to get to see it like this again. It was incredible. So many details on the sides, in the peripheral that I'd forgotten that came back, and
it was the last time, because when it came out later, it was...
That's true,
slightly butchered.
That's true.
Was it jarring for somebody who, like... I had seen Star Wars a handful of times, and I went and saw the special editions, and I could tell where they added stuff. Yeah. But was it like super jarring for you, who had known that movie inside and out?
It was, and it didn't. I wasn't mad, but like everyone. It was. I think you were talking on the podcast about when they used to redub old movies for TV to like cut out the swear words and be like, "You dirty bad guy," and it would just sound totally fake. And it was like that. Like the pattern. Every single beat was so ingrained in our hearts and our minds that as soon as something new happened, it was extremely loud and took me out of it a little bit. And some of them were neat, and most of them probably were not strictly necessary.
Right.
But and some were just random changes that were a little baffling. But
is my memory correct that as we went along with those 3, Return of the Jedi had a lot less manipulation than the first one, or was that just?
I think the first one might have the most. Empire is largely untouched. There's very little in there that there's like a couple extra shots of a Wampa, and some of the stuff they added is actually really cool. Like they had in Cloud City, which is the whole final act of the movie, originally is mostly just white walls that they're inside of, and they cut windows and had the beautiful exterior atmosphere of
that's something I wouldn't
of the planet Bespin. Outside, so you could see a lot more of that stuff. And they
like digitally inserted like Domino's pizza on the table.
Yeah, some Mountain Dew and the
what are those guys in red? The Gamorrean Guard, right?
The Gamorrean Guards are the green pig guys. Oh, the guys in red are the Emperor's Royal Guard.
And they put all the NASCAR logos all over.
They did do that.
The big tide. That was unnecessary.
I mean, I think it worked into the story pretty organically, but. And then the big one with Jedi was that they brought in the kid from the prequels at the end to be the ghost of Anakin Skywalker to tie it more directly together.
So when we saw that in the theater in '96, it had the little boy who's going to be in, or they did that later on the video.
No, that's true. That's it's hard to track because they've changed multiple times over all the different DVD releases and special releases and everything else. But eventually, yes, I guess in the final, unless there's another edition coming, I guess not because he gave it away. He gave it away for $4 billion.
Oh, wait, he can't touch it anymore without Mickey's permission.
I think he has to go to the mouse.
Right.
I'm pretty sure. So in the final version, it's Hayden Christensen, the actor, which kind of set a lot of people off.
The untouched version, of Star Wars, of all 3 of those, has not been properly released onto DVD. Correct?
Not officially,
except as a bonus feature on some DVDs.
There's a bonus feature on some DVDs, but it's not. I think it's not widescreen.
It's not like anamorphic widescreen. Right. It doesn't look good on your TV. Right.
Correct. Yeah,
but.
Now there are internet hijinks you can pull together,
Yes.
which I did to show the trilogy to my daughter, because we only saw Star Wars and The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. She had no context of the prequels. So it's like, when we get to the end of Return of the Jedi, and this teenager randomly shows up as a ghost at the end, it's the big finish scene. You're like, what is happening?
Exactly.
Who's this guy? Who's this kid? So I showed her the original version with actor Sebastian Shaw, who plays Anakin's ghost. Thank you.
Who plays the Imperial Guard number 4?
Jack Purvis. I'm kidding. Jack Purvis was the lead Jawa, of course. And Chief Ugnaught.
Another cool thing about Star Wars is, for anyone that was paying any attention when they were younger, like, I was not huge into Star Wars. R2 and C-3PO were my jam, and I had a plush R2, and I had a R2 and C-3PO watch, and I had a lot of books with them in it, but I wasn't hugely into the movie, and only saw them once each when I was little until they started popping up on HBO. But I know a lot of the characters from the toy commercials, because they would run those, first of all, incessantly, and they would be very clear. This is Hammerhead, and this is Lando, and this is Cloud City, and this is a pod car, or land speeder, and all this stuff that I didn't extract when I saw it the one time in the theater. So
yeah, a lot of those things were never said in the movie. Like Wampa, we got from the toy. Ewok, we got from the toy. They never say Ewok once
really?
in Return of the Jedi. Yeah, the word Ewok is never uttered in Return of the Jedi.
Wow.
And they're, of course, incredibly popular characters.
I had Ewok pajamas that were the jam. They were
I had
yellow with green cuffs, and the picture was them holding somebody in a chair. Like,
probably C-3PO
in a chair.
lifting him
And it had the treehouse in the back. Yeah.
I had a Return of the Jedi red plastic lunchbox with a red plastic thermos that had Wicket the Ewok on the front. Yeah.
Nice. Did you have the treehouse toy?
I did have... Oh, wow! Yes, I did! I did have the Ewok treehouse. The village. That was amazing.
That was later recycled as...
you've told me this and I forgot.
I did. As the Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, Kevin Costner movie. They repackaged all the leftover...
Sure.
Or maybe they used the same mold or whatever. It's the exact same toy. I'll have to see if I can dig up a picture of them and put them online somewhere. Like our Twitter account, at WYF Movie Podcast.
I follow.
Or the Facebook page, or the stupid Instagram page.
Hang on, there's an Instagram page?
Oh, yes, there is.
I follow that too.
What about waiting in line? How many did you have? Some good waiting in line stories, didn't you? Of just waiting.
I do. So going back to Star Wars was gone for a while.
Right.
Started to get real big with the special editions, but when they announced a new Star Wars movie, and George Lucas had teased this for the longest time as well. It's actually 3 trilogies, and next I'll probably do the story of how Darth Vader became Darth Vader, and do a 1, 2, and 3, which is why Star Wars is called Episode 4 and the whole thing. No one ever thought he was actually going to do it, and then in the late 90s, it's happening, all 3, and the hype around Episode 1 was unreal.
Right.
It's probably only matched by the unbelievable disappointment suffered by many. After seeing the
I would
movie
say it's matched by the
times.
hype of Force Awakens. I mean, good God, this planet almost stood still for that movie to come out.
Yeah, it's true. So, I mean, this is amazing. I can't believe I'm about to admit this. I literally would have dreams that Star Wars action figures were back in the stores. I would wake up and go oh, that wasn't real. That's pathetic. But that happened. And
that's what happens when you sleep on a bed of Star Wars action figures.
So speaking of Star Wars beds, I purchased a comforter, a pod racing comforter from Walmart.
Yes.
Went directly to the historic Senator Theater that I mentioned earlier. And this was, Bill and I had strategized that we had to get tickets for the movie. So I wrapped myself up in this comforter, got in line, which went down the block from the theater and around and way up the next block. And I was there overnight. So I was half on the sidewalk and half on some guy's lawn in my comforter bought just for that purpose. Kind of half dozing, but not really, until the sun came up and they finally started selling the tickets. Ultimately, we got tickets for 9 a.m. the second day. There was midnight tickets, but those were way gone by the time I got to the front. However, because of Bill, he had a friend, I think another film student at the time, that was, like many film students, making a documentary about the return of the Star Wars hype. And we had helped him with some interviews and other things before, and he'd worked out a deal with the Senator to actually cover the night of the show. So, for the very first showing, we went in as a film crew, if you can hear my air quotes I'm making, and, felt super bad rolling in with our camera, and, like, we're here on business and everything. And the theater manager got up and gave a little speech. People were definitely dressed up for this one. Plastic lightsabers are waving all over the place. He's getting the crowd super hyped. And right before he gave his speech, we had talked to him and said, well, we want to record your speech. We want to get the crowd reaction, like everything right up to the movie. But then, like, I don't even remember how we brought it up. But basically, like, can we just watch the movie?
Right.
And because that guy was super cool.
Well, you were putting him in a movie. Yeah, he was excited.
Yeah, and he was like, all right, look.
Was it Tom Kefauver, owner of the Senator?
It's entirely possible. It was actually, I think, Bill that set it up. But he was like, look, you can't sit in any seats because they're all sold.
Right.
They're all sold. And we're like, of course, we get it. He's like, hang out on the side. Also, the second the lights go down, that camera goes in the box, and you close it and you lock it, and that box better not open again, because people still take their relationship with Lucasfilm and now with Disney extremely seriously.
Right.
And we were like, yeah, of course. And he's like, all right then.
Nice.
And so then it turned out, after all, very first showing, and at midnight, and because like we had a job to go film, so it was super cool. Even though we were literally just sitting in the aisle against the wall, all the way on the right side of the theater, we got to see episode 1 that way.
And now that clarifies the story in my head of you were waiting in line to see it and be there first, and I wanted to see it, but I didn't care enough to wait in line or anything like that. And then the night that it came out, like maybe 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, the night before it came out, like you're waiting in line, you've been in line, whatever. Our buddy Matt, who was just on a few episodes ago, I think we covered on this story on the show, but he called me up. Hey, my buddy that runs the theater is doing a midnight screening of Phantom Menace. It's just a few people. We're gonna go. Actually, whatever. So I'm like, I'm gonna beat Brian to it, because at that point, the last I talked to you, pre-cell phone, you had tickets for the 9 o'clock show or something like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna see it before Brian and not wait in line. And then I think I called you and you were like, no, I already saw it.
Yeah, worked it out.
You know what else I remember? Somebody had the trailer first, like Inside Edition, or do you remember this?
No.
One of these shows, like
I remember, it might have been the first real trailer that I watched online, which was a big deal in 1999.
The first time you saw the trailer.
Yeah.
Okay, so they aired the trailer in some show, and I taped it like off of it, and I called you up before you used to work overnights delivering newspapers, and I was like, I have the trailer for Phantom Menace. And you were like, what? I was like, I have the entire trailer for Phantom Menace. This was before things went up on the internet or whatever.
Sure. Before you just had it in your pocket instantly, right?
You're like, I have to see it. I have to go to work. I was like, do your papers. Come knock on my window. I had a ground floor window at my parents' house.
Oh my God, now I remember.
Yeah. Yes. At like 3:30 in the morning, you drove like a half hour out to my house, knocked on the bedroom window.
Yes.
And I was like, yeah, here it is. I was like so happy to show it to you.
Oh
my God. I think we probably watched it like 2 or 3 times, and then you just like sat there like, oh.
Yeah.
And then we probably went out and got chili dogs or something at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Seems right.
But there was no line waiting for Force Awakens, right? Things like Fandango and all that took that out of the equation.
Yeah. But I did have a plan. So Force Awakens, again, the hype, unreal. Now, I mentioned a couple of times that I went out to California. So when Episode 2 came out, I was in school. And when Episode 3 came out, I was out in California working. And I just kind of saw them with whoever, people from work or whatever at the time. But the Force Awakens hype was getting very, very real.
It was palpable.
It was palpable. It was Emperor Palpable. That's a super nerdy joke. And
Emperor Palpatine, played by
Ian McDiarmid in Jedi and the prequels. So anyways, I suddenly just had this plan. I was like, oh my God, I need to go back home. Bill and I have to see Episode 7 together. And we have to see it at the Senator Theater.
Dun-dun.
That's right. See how it all comes together. And like you said, no lines, but there were these like rumors, like on Monday Night Football, there's going to be a trailer.
Right.
And then like as soon as the trailer's done, tickets are supposed to be available online. So
Because, of course, Monday Night Football, also owned by Disney.
So we mentioned the video game publisher I work for, which Ed has also called Nerd HQ, I believe. So if you can imagine, basically production ground to a halt about halfway through the day, even before the football started, and everyone just started camping all the movie ticket sites and just refreshing constantly and waiting to see when it was going to go.
I remember you calling me like, we got nothing done at work today.
Yeah.
Like, I don't just mean like my floor. The entire building got nothing done today.
It's true, but I didn't have the senator doesn't use Fandango, so I was on some different site, and I had it on my laptop that I use for work, and on my phone, and on an iPad I was using, and I was just like George Jetson, just tapping everywhere and refreshing, and just hoping like, oh, like this has to be my life, the reality where I get these tickets for the first showing, it has to happen. And I even called the senator cross country and like pestered the manager and tried to get info. And again, he was like, I am not going to tell you when tickets start going on sale. And I was like, well, they say it's this date. And he was like, I will confirm the date that's already been announced. But like, I can't say more than that. He's like, I respect that you're trying to come all the way across country and see it at our theater, but like, I really can't. I was like, okay.
Meanwhile, Mickey Mouse was standing behind him with a lightsaber to his throat.
So I did get the tickets.
Yes.
And I actually found the picture recently that I took where a selfie where I'm holding up the tickets, and I think I have a greater look of pride on my face than I've ever had shy of like my daughter's birth, that I had these tickets. And of course I immediately sent it to Bill with the message like, we got the tickets. Like, this is happening.
Wait, real quick, number one.
Yeah.
How less fun and more stressful was that than just getting your asses in line at like 3 days ahead of time or 2 weeks ahead of time?
Far more stressful.
And just chilling out. And
far less fun.
Right.
But managed to get it. And because it wasn't a midnight showing like many had suspected, it was earlier in the night, which we talked about.
Right. Well, I was gonna toss this in too. The whole time that this is going on, Brian's saying to me, like, you should come, you should come, you should come.
Of course.
I'm thinking in my head it's midnight. We never communicated that back and forth. And I'm like, okay, I'm not that big of a fan that I need to see it twice, and my kids want to see it. And they can't go to a midnight show on a school night, so I'll just take them, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then you get the tickets for like a 7:30 show. And you send me the picture. I'm like, wait, you're going at 7:30? Oh, I could go. Well, too bad you're not getting tickets now.
And I only found out, I think, that day about the 7:30.
Right.
It was like leading right up to when the tickets were going to come out.
There was no discussion of that. We just assumed it was midnight. And
so I thought it was just going to be me and Bill, and then it turned out, because it was earlier, I got to bring my brother. My daughter got to come out, which, if you can imagine how wild it was for Bill and I, who I said grew up with these movies, watching them thousands of times, to sit down for a brand new adventure with my kid. We never dreamt that was going to happen. And we even had a ticket left over. Also, my wife was there, which was amazing. But we had a ticket left over for Bill's mom, who is a huge movie fan in her own right, and who set us up to watch, the original movies on VHS more times than I could possibly count. So it was really cool to be able to bring her out. I did dress up. I was dressed as Poe Dameron, which I thought was a pretty good costume, and which nobody got because we hadn't seen the movie yet.
Right.
No one knew who that was.
You sent me the picture, like, look at my costume. I'm like, Space Indiana Jones? What are you? I don't get it.
Nice guy in a jacket holding a Star Wars blaster.
We'll have to put that picture up. You still have that? That picture's floating around somewhere.
I do. I'll get that one.
We'll find that.
I'll get that one for sure. So we're in the Disney store. I'm jumping tracks a little bit here. It's all connected. We're in the Disney store, and they have a little girl's Rey costume. And I start nudging Autumn like, hey, wouldn't that, kind of be fun? You and Daddy dress up and and she was like, oh, I guess. Which was weird.
None of my friends will be there.
Yeah, and it was weird because, she was 9, I guess, at the time? But she hasn't approached things with that, like, she's not like a teenager where she approaches everything with a lack of enthusiasm. So it's like, oh, okay. I don't want, like, it's kind of my thing, so I'm not going to twist your arm or whatever, it's fine. And then she's walking around, and she finds a Star Wars shirt. That was a girl's shirt. It was, like, gray, and it had the Star Wars logo, but in, like, a rainbow ink, kind of. And she was like, oh, this is great. Like, she loved that. And she's like, I could wear this with this. And she and my wife start coordinating. I'm like, that's cool. Like, she just wants to do it in her own way. Like, she's excited. So, like, that's fine. Like, it would have been really cool to have a little Rey by my side or whatever, but that's okay. So, the movie came out very close to a year ago, mid-December, very close to Christmas. So, when I'm getting ready to go out to the theater, Janae says, oh, Autumn, you want to get your daddy that one present real quick before we go? Right. So, she comes in with a wrapped package I'm like, oh, what's going on? And so I rip it open, and it's the Rey costume. Nice. And she's like, Daddy, I'm going to dress up like Rey. And because they turned it into this surprise, right? They're like, my wife kind of presented it that way and got the idea in her head, so she was super excited again. So, of course, I immediately wept like a baby. It was so sweet. So I'm dressed like Poe. She's dressed like Rey. We get in line. I'm like, I really hope they don't like fall in love in the movie because that would be super awkward. We didn't know what any of the relationships or characters were. And it is Star Wars. You have to be a little careful with the familial relationships and things. But everyone in line was having a blast with the fact that my 9-year-old was there dressed up and we were so excited. The news crews were out covering.
Yes.
So we got interviewed for the Baltimore Sun. We had, I think, the picture you were just referring to. I forget the photographer's name, unfortunately. He took the most amazing picture of me and Autumn for the Sun that was on the website. We got interviewed on camera
for Fox 45.
Fox 45, Baltimore affiliate. And like I said, we had Bill there. We had Bill's mom there. It was so exciting.
And I just remember thinking how awesome it was. Like I say, you work at Nerd HQ, but you're still the Star Wars guy.
I have the reputation there, even with the other nerds.
So you fly. Brian's flying out to Maryland to go see Star Wars, and then you zapping back across country to everybody back home. Yeah, I was on the news. I was in the newspaper. I was on the cover.
And that was I kind of suspected, but as soon as we were like, we flew in from San Jose, like all the news people came over because that's a story. The best part was I heard from friends after, like later that night. I was kind of scrolling through Facebook. We were getting something to eat. And, people I'd worked with years and years before, hadn't seen in forever, were on Facebook like, how did I know? Like, I see the story on the news, this family came from San Jose. I was like, hang on. And, of course, it was you and your daughter. So that was really cool.
It was a pretty amazing 24 hours. Yeah.
It was incredible. They had somebody playing piano, doing, like, the score just to keep the crowd excited before the movie started. It was a great crowd. And then, like, on top of everything, the movie was amazing.
Yes.
And I was so blown away just emotionally from, like, everything that had happened the entire day and all the hype and everything else that, like, I couldn't judge. Like, I didn't have that, like, oh, I love this movie. I was just like, so much new data.
So many new actors to memorize.
Yeah. So I'm so behind on my trivia again. But, Autumn loved it. Everybody loved it. My wife took my brother and my daughter back home. Bill and I dropped off his mom and went to hang out because when I come back east, I try and set aside at least one full night to hang out with Bill.
Right.
I had a copy of Star Wars Battlefront, a very popular Star Wars game, that I gave him for his Christmas present. And we were very excited because when we were not growing up Star Wars, we grew up video games and played tons of video games together. In all the years of our friendship, we'd never played a game together online for some reason. So we were like, boom, Battlefront's it, Star Wars. This will be amazing. And of course, it turned out that was the last night that I hung out with Bill.
Right.
Because it was early March the next year, so it wasn't even 3 months after.
Yeah.
Right? But like I mentioned earlier in the show, that night was so incredible.
Yeah.
That picture that I have of me and Autumn is so great. Like, all the memories associated with that. It truly was, Star Wars and movies and everything else aside, one of the greatest nights of my entire life. And to have that recent memory to hang on to means everything.
I'm sure.
And I think about that, and it just makes me happy to remember that night and to have that incredible send-off.
That's awesome. It was a cool night, and people that knew you were happy for you. Like people were like congratulating you on how good the movie was.
Right.
As if you wrote it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's awesome.
It was thrilling. I can't wait to see what happens next.
And I think, and maybe somebody's listening to this that doesn't have a Star Wars fan in their life, gets how the movie can be more than just a movie. And it's not just like, first of all, you're not fat, period, but you're not like just a fat nerd, like sitting in his basement doing a podcast. Like, it's interwoven into your life and as a part of your life.
It is.
And and it's a triggering moment of emotional memories to think about that. Like, that was an awesome night for you. And then, that was the last time you saw Bill.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I quote unquote should have been there. Like, if we had maybe communicated a little better, I would have been there. And I was like, I don't think I know I didn't see Bill after that, so I can't even really remember exactly when the last time I saw Bill was. But I know I had talked to him on the phone like a couple weeks before, but
Yeah.
what an emotional story to end our podcast on. We should probably wrap this up.
Yeah.
And we should have had some tissues for you, but that's all right. But we covered everything about Star Wars for now.
I think we did.
What do you real quick, the new movie. You're excited?
Rogue One.
Rogue One.
I'm excited. I was interested because it's not a major numbered movie. It's this new side story, sort of this new format they're experimenting with. Wasn't super hyped from the first trailer. Was super hyped after the second trailer. I thought the second trailer was really good. So now I'm super excited about it. Of course, when I mentioned that to Ed over text, I was like, hey, that second trailer, really excited about Rogue One now. And he wrote back and said, that's good, Brian. We were all really worried you weren't going to see the new Star Wars movie. Which was fair. That was a good one.
True that.
But yeah, I'm really excited. I'm excited to see where it goes.
And it comes out
December 16th.
Do you have tickets already?
I do have tickets for a 7 p.m. show, first showing.
In D-Box.
And this time, I will be seeing it with some friends from work who felt burned that I left the state to go see Star Wars last year instead of hanging out with them.
Right. Well, you'll have to let us know how you feel, Brian, if it's any good.
I will.
It looks good.
Next time I fly 3,000 miles to do the show.
Well, next time you're on the show, here's some other things we didn't get to cover.
All right.
We didn't get to cover you touring the town that Goonies was filmed in, doing the Goonies tour.
I did go to Astoria.
We didn't get
Oregon.
to talk about Chopping Mall, which has come up twice on the show now and never really delve into. So
it's true. We didn't get to talk about Chopping Mall or the sequel that we're currently writing a tribute for.
Our mutual love of Spice World. We didn't even touch on that, which people are sick of hearing about Spice World.
I've only seen it twice.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How many times?
Have you really only seen it twice?
No, I'm sorry. I saw it twice in the theater. I have seen it once on video since then, DVD.
I feel like it's been more than that.
At least once on DVD. How many times have you seen Spice World?
Well, I saw it 3 times in the theater. I have no idea how many times I've seen it on video or whatever.
Round it to the nearest dozen.
Yeah, I've probably seen it
because that's round.
I've probably seen it 3 or 4, maybe 5 dozen times.
Okay, fair enough.
I mean, how could you not see it, Brian?
Let's call it a gross.
I heard it's like passing a block of flats with balconies. All right, folks, and with that, we're going to wrap up What's Your Favorite Movie with Producer Brian, who... The reason I call him Producer Brian is every single thing with this show, I text him. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this? Should I do that? Here's 10 theme songs. Which one should I use? Thanks for flying 3,000 miles. Make sure you turn in your receipt for your ticket to the secretary upstairs so she can reimburse you. I will do that. Do you validate parking? We do. Yes, excellent. We do. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining us on What's Your Favorite Movie. Remember, new episodes first and third Wednesday of the month. You can find it on iTunes, Spreaker, various links on our Twitter, Facebook, Haja Haja Haja. Is that a thing people say? Haja Haja Haja? Constantly. All right. Brian, thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me out, man. All right. Until next time, folks, it's khaki wishes and cookie dreams, and may the Force be with you.